it's been a tough month with the bees for sure. The weather's been cold and raining and windy, so it's not been your typical April, May. So welcome everybody, and welcome any new members that we have tonight. We always start the meeting with our bee gurus. Let me just play slideshow. And our bee gurus are, today we have Merle Stone, past president of the CCBA, Keith Jardine, past president of the CCBA, Frank Witkowski, master beekeeper. Merle's master beekeeper too, I'm sorry, Merle. Frank, master beekeeper, and runs Exton Bee Company. And usually we have Warren Graham, who's a master beekeeper, but I don't think Warren's on tonight. So these guys are here as our true guides to sort of answer any questions that you have in regards to what's going on with your hive. So we're gonna spend 20 or 30 minutes just sort of opening up and fielding any questions that anybody has. So again, as Mark said, feel free to type them into the chat section. And who's going to moderate that box? Will you moderate that, Mark?
Jack, you and I maybe, and Tina.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Great. So don't be shy. Just type in your questions, and hopefully our gurus will have some answers for you.
Well, I do have a question that I can't type in because I'm a panelist, but we were talking about this earlier. I did an inspection earlier this week and found that I had hundreds of thousands and tens of thousands of bees, but I could find no evidence of brood except for a couple of here and there drone cells. Could not find a queen, could not find eggs. But clearly I had a queen 2 weeks ago when I had brood and everything else. So I think a couple of us have swarmed. Well, my hive did swarm, that is correct. But I don't see any queen cells either. Not active queen cells. All I have is a couple of cups and no, good looking queen cells.
Yeah, Mark, what might have happened there is that because of the cold weather, we had virgins and queens at the same time. So they were waiting for the correct day to swarm. So you might have a virgin queen running around. You might find the bees are pretty relaxed. They know that there's a virgin in there, the virgin's mating, and it's just a matter of time before we see eggs. But with the cold weather, we found that there were virgins running around like crazy. Yeah. So normally, as soon as the queen cell's capped, it's a signal for them to go, but they've also got to wait for decent weather when they're not going to freeze themselves to death. So, yeah. So that's more than likely, my guess.
Great. Appreciate that.
A good idea to give those bees a frame of sealed brood, just in case that queen doesn't work out, that you don't start laying workers. The sealed brood gives off a pheromone that inhibits the laying workers. So it'll buy you some time to make sure that queen starts laying in the meantime.
Sealed brood does. I would have thought unsealed would. Interesting, Frank.
Well, you could give it eggs too, and nick them, and they'll make a queen if they don't have one in the meantime. It's just, if you wanted to introduce a queen later, it'll be harder to do if you have laying workers.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
That's interesting. So just the sealed brood will give off enough pheromone that hive will not turning into a laying worker if you're just waiting for that virgin to come around.
Yeah, I don't find that laying workers come on that quick, but it's an insurance.
I guess it also gives you some nurse bees to have around too when she finally does come back, that you have. But I guess like the bees can go between roles based on what's needed, right?
Right, and plus you sort of have maximum nurse bees now because they're just coming through that huge buildup while the brood coming out. But also with Mark, the absence of queen cell sign, they can sometimes they'll clean them up. They'll tear down the queen cell. And
we have a question from Craig Smith, who says, I'm very light on drawn comb. This is his second year, but I have comb with leftover nectar and some honey. How can I use that or recondition this?
Oh, you can spin it out. Did you have an extractor?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, there are a lot of options. I mean, what you can do, if you've got leftover honey, maybe from sugar water feeding last year or from old honey, sometimes on a strong colony, you put a full frame of honey in the bottom there, and they start cleaning it out when they use it for the brood. So you don't extract it and use it with your honey. You might have done some type of treatment with it. So it's a good idea to put it on the bottom, and they clean it out when they need it. And yeah, but probably one of the major problems you have this time of year is that a lot of people have lost their swarms, lost a lot of their bees because of swarms. So you needed to have done a very good swarm strategy.
The next question is from Tom Lunt. He asks, what is the safest mite treatment for bees? And is there any harm to treating a young hive just to make sure they are okay without doing a wash? I started with 4 nukes and 2 swarms 3 weeks ago.
Well, we really don't treat without doing a check first. That's the safest thing. You know, we don't use a treatment as a diagnosis. And beyond that, I'd probably oxalic is in my mind, it's the safest, least invasive with good efficacy. But again, without checking, I wouldn't do it. It's not a good practice to treat without checking.
You could always uncap some drone cells and look at them, or
right.
Put in a drone frame and freeze those, knowing that this time of the year, if you have mites, that's where they're heading. That would probably be the safest.
Okay, next question from Fred Reiser. What is the window for a newly emerged virgin to go on her mating flight?
Yeah, that's not exact. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, I did a batch of 60 queens at the end of March, and I've just seen they started to lay maybe a week ago. So yeah, there's you know, they're progressively, the longer that you keep a virgin queen without mating, the old rule of thumb was the worse they get. They need to mate, and it's best to have them mated quickly, but they can take their time. And remember that they might just sit around, they've mated, and they just sit around and wander around the hive aimlessly and then start 7 days later. So, but they could start much earlier. It's not as exact as what we have with the queen rearing. Queen rearing, day 3, the egg hatches, day this and day that, day 16, you've got your queen. So the mating of the virgins is a little bit difficult to predict.
Yeah, I know I had virgins that were in mating boxes for 2 weeks before they probably went out and mated and changed their size. It's amazing how quickly they'll change once they mate, you know, but I clearly had virgins for 2 weeks and they all ended up being layers. We'll see how good, but so I know 2 weeks.
I think the weather's been kind of crummy for mating. I've been killing virgins and putting new cells in and just letting them go through the process again, because I just haven't seen them progressing in some hives, in some mating nukes like I have in others. So you know, if 80% of them are getting mated in The rest are not. I'm just killing them off and moving forward.
Yeah, I wish I had an 80% success rate on my mating.
What?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm jealous of you, Frank. I've been tempted to ring your phone and chat with you for a little bit and say, teach me something.
We should meet up in the mating yard sometime.
But like George said, it'll be
I don't say that
interesting.
to anyone, George.
Thanks, Frank. We'll leave it at that.
Okay, moving right along. The next question was from someone who signed on with a number, not a name, so I don't know who it is. My hive swarmed 3 weeks ago, and I caught it, and now I have 2 hives. My original hive swarmed again today, and I plan to catch it now. Will it swarm again?
Yeah, just put a frame of brood in there, and then they
maybe
hold them.
The old sort of, I don't know if it's rule of thumb, but it would depend on how strong, what the population, these real monster colonies can throw out multiple swarms after swarms. The thing to keep in mind that you've gotten 2 swarms. If you do get a 3rd one, the size is going to keep going down. Typically, you might get just a couple of quarts of bees. You can't really expect another really prime swarm.
Okay, the next one I'm going to direct first to Keith, but certainly you others can chime in. But based on what the question is, I'm going to throw this one to Keith. Looking for locust bloom predictions.
The black locust, yeah. So we predicted in March. We said it's going to be 2nd of May. I looked at the trees today when I was doing my bee yards, and it doesn't look as though they're popping anytime soon. So, but they do come out very suddenly. And on the hives, it looks as though we're getting 3-4 pounds of honey a day with our hives, but that should go up to 15 to 18 pounds as soon as the black locust starts. As long as you've kept your hives big and strong and you haven't lost all the swarms, then it looks good. And we don't know whether they've got damaged a little bit by the frosts, but if I look out my window now, I can see some tulip poplar out there. So the tulip trees out.
The locust trees down my way are just beginning to green. The leaves are just popping on them.
I was out with Tony this week looking at the hives out at the apiary, and there were 2 hives that had a full deep of full already of nectar. So that looks like a really good site out there for bringing in something early.
Yeah, the Elaeagnus is out, so they're taking from Elaeagnus. The apple is still blooming. We've got strawberries out. So there's a lot of things. I think it's mainly the very, very light aromatic honey that's coming in now is the Elaeagnus, the autumn olive. Mm-hmm. Some people call it Russian olive, but that's beautiful honey. And very light, very fragrant. But as soon as the black locust comes on, then they tend to switch. Now, one of the things we must look out for is that in previous years, we've watched the bloom, and we know that they gain the nectar from the scales at about 11 a.m. is maximum yield that we have. But on looking and even climbing up the black locust trees, it's difficult to see the bees on them. And we're trying to get photographs of them. And sometimes I find they are working the honeysuckle when you expect them to be working the black locust. So if anyone's out, if you've got time, please look at this. Go. I find if it's very, very humid, they tend to go for honeysuckle, which traditionally honeysuckle you would expect them not to go to because it's more of a bumblebee type. But yeah, in some years we've noticed that the honey is from the honeysuckle. But we just need everyone to look out. And but if we get a good black locust and we don't have too much rain at that time, we will see our hives gaining substantially.
Okay. George Watman says, I had a swarm up very high today, like 35 feet up. I threw a string over them and shook it, but didn't drop the entire swarm. They're still there. Any ideas?
Yeah, there are lots. This is one of the best things. Sorry, I'm taking from George. They throw a fishing line over there and drop the weight to the bottom and pull up a frame or two, and they cluster around the frame and then slowly lower it. Or use my vacuum. My vacuum's in use at the moment, but people taking from tall trees, and you just suck them down into the vacuum, and a lot of options. But I like the fishing rod. It gives you practice for fishing.
You have 30 feet of hose for your vacuum?
Yeah. You string it all together. I'll show you a photograph.
It's like pushing rope uphill.
Yeah, it's you use PVC tubing, and you and you just put it all together and you suck it out. So yeah, I've got some photographs from a very tall tree. So it's you just line it up on a branch and you slide it up and you get it to it, switch the vacuum on, and gradually suck all the bees down. You got to make sure that you don't damage the bees. You decelerate them.
Janie Gordon asks, I have a swarm I need to move from a swarm box into a hive. How does one go about moving them safely?
I would. It's the same procedure as a nuke.
You want to describe that, Merle?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Is this, you mean a swarm capture box? Is that what they're in?
I think so.
Okay. Are there frames in the box, or is it sort of haphazard comb?
She didn't say in the written.
Okay. Well, the frames are kind of obvious, but haphazard comb, you'll have to, some of the comb is going to get damaged, of course, but try to salvage as much of the comb with brood. And you can take an empty, deep or shallow frame, whatever is appropriate, and sort of fit those pieces in the area, and then use big rubber bands and go from each end, and it will support it. And if it's supported, the bees will attach it to the frame. But it's just sort of ingenuity, work with the shapes. It's like putting a puzzle together and try to do the best you can and move them over, and then leave, hopefully you have some drawn comb that you can put in there with them. But once that brood emerges, then you can get rid of that haphazard comb.
Wayne Clifton asks, please explain the process of installing a queen cell in a queenless nuke. I get a queen cell this Saturday.
It's very easy. Just put it in the hive.
Well,
but make sure it isn't isolated and doesn't get cold. The center of the cluster, all the standard things. You don't want it to be chilled, but by the time you get the queen cell, it should be on day 14 or 15. So they're more resilient at that stage. Just treat them very gently, and the transport makes sure that they stay warm, 92, 93 degrees. And just gently insert it in, and yeah.
Well, I assume is it one for one of George's queens?
Probably.
So it's going to be in a cup. Probably you're using JZBZ.
Yep.
Cup. So that the base of that cup will wedge between either the top bar or the wax. So you sort of push it into one and then put the other frame next to it, and it will secure it in place. And if you have a brood nest, try to center it up in the brood nest. that's sort of where everything happens in the nuke. You know, that's where things happen, and put her in that location.
And just so people know, queens and queen cells will come with a instruction page that will go over installation. But yes, if you have cap brood or brood on a frame, that's where you kind of want to stick it. Keep it vertically oriented, and you know, don't let it bounce around too much in the car.
Here's an interesting one from Donald Stockley. Did an alcohol wash, and out of 600 bees, I had one mite. Cut some wonky brood comb from a frame and pulled out about 50 or so and had 9 mites. I went from a really low count to 18 per 100 with the drone culling. Is that a better method of doing a mite check?
Yeah, they say that the drones is not that accurate. It's a very good way just to check, yeah.
Yeah, but right now, this time of the year, pulling drone larvae, or pupa actually, is very effective. And I sort of, in fact, that's what I use. I'm not going to be doing any washes now. I use an uncapping scratcher. And with that fork, you can just take and pull out a whole row of pupa just with one swipe. And if you have mites, you will see them. Particularly if the pupa is in what they call the dark-eyed stage.
Yeah, it's not surprising this time of year you're going to find more mites underneath the cappings in the larvae than you are going to see them on the bees itself. So your alcohol wash will probably underestimate the % of mites you have in your hive right now.
And if you were going to treat using oxalic, it wouldn't do much, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to put formic in your hive right now, and if you want to treat, right, for apivar, but you can't use apivar and honey, so your option, I guess, is formic right now if you want to.
Yeah,
get those ones.
I wouldn't treat now unless it was sort of a dire situation. And
I love the question. I think it's a great question. And if you can trap those mites now, it's a great time to do it.
Yeah. So everybody who's put drone frames into their hives, pull them out. You know,
everyone should be using the drone frames now.
Yeah, don't let all those drones emerge.
So you should be freezing them or culling the drone. I think I'm on round 6 now of the drone comb. So into the freezer, and it should just be a natural thing that we do.
Good point, Keith.
But not having a dedicated drone frame, you probably have a lot of frames right at this time. Right now, are going to be fringed with drone cells and so forth, and you can sort of work around the cells that are available and pull them out or cut them off. I don't know. It's for me, it's a little bit of a difficult question or an issue because those drones actually are part of the colony cycle. They have a reason for being there. And when we talk about colony balance, drones are part of it. So you do need some. I would never pull all of them out.
Okay, we have a follow-up from an earlier question that I think Janie Gordon asked. The follow-up was from Fred Weiser. Either with a purchased nuke or a caught swarm, when is it time to move them into a regular brood box?
No.
You can do it immediately. I mean, a swarm can go into a brood box. In fact, a lot of swarms, your prime swarms, really need that full deep brood box.
Especially now that the weather's warm.
Yeah.
It's going to be warm.
Okay. Next question is from Tom Lunt, and he's asking about a situation that I myself had recently. One of my recent swarm acquisitions, I have yet to find the queen. They are staying in the box and bringing in pollen. How long should I wait before giving them a frame of eggs to see if they need to make a queen? All of my hives are new, so I'm not overflowing with resource frames yet.
I think just put some eggs and young larvae in there anyway. It's not going to do harm, and just check if
nothing to lose.
You might have missed a queen. You might have a virgin queen that's difficult to find. So yeah, I would suggest just put in eggs and larvae, young eggs and larvae, and just see what happens with them. You'll see very quickly.
Keith, how soon should you go back and look at that frame to see if they're building a cell?
You can go the next day if you've got time.
The next day, you'd already see them starting to build that cell out.
Yeah, we'll give them 2 days. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, the next question is from Garrett Graney. After 5 years, I'm up to 25 hives. The fun of beekeeping is starting to fade and it's feeling more like a job. I, for unknown reason, am still splitting hives and catching swarms. How many hives are you keeping? How do you keep your hive count steady? And what should I be doing with all these hives?
Okay, yeah, we're in the same boat.
Yeah. Well, the key word, yeah, the key word here is addiction. And
you want to buy some more? I've got more than I can handle. Yeah.
But what I would suggest would be to look at some different avenues, for challenges. Try to make some comb honey. Try one of like a gnat hive, just different things to keep it interesting. And too many bees, just stop splitting. And of course, you're going to get more swarms then. So I guess some of them are just going to fly to the woods. But
Garrett, I'm in need of some bees for some mating boxes on Saturday. So
there you go.
If you have any interest in donating some bees to that effort, I'd more than appreciate it. So just to throw that out there, you can send me an email or message me if you have any interest in helping us out there. And that goes for everybody out there, honestly. The first round of mating boxes, needless to say, had some external environmental forces that were not predicted.
George, we're at the bottom of the hour.
Yeah, do you want to? Jen has one, and that looks like it. So do you want to do that one, Jack, and we'll wrap the bee gurus up?
Okay, Jen is asking if I am getting a mated queen tomorrow and I'm using it to requeen. Is it correct to say that I should have culled my queens in my hives today or yesterday, or started a split if I wanted to use them for a split?
Who wants to take this?
You're going to requeen, and you're asking how long your old queens need to be out of your hives for?
Yes, I think that's what she's asking. Should she have already removed the old queen before putting in the mated queen?
My answer is, if you're going to kill the old queen, what I do is if I'm going to kill the old queen, I crush her head, put her back in the hive so that the other bees know that she's dead, and immediately introduce the new queen. If I want to use that queen for something else, I usually pull it and then wait maybe 3 hours and then introduce the new queen. If you do it too soon, they may start raising a new queen and not want the queen that you want to give them. That's why I think it's important to get that new queen in, as soon as possible, not wait 2 days or even the next day. In my experience.
Yeah, I'd go a little bit more cautiously, and if you only got a few hives, what I would do then is create a split and introduce the queen cell to it. So the old queen is still working with her hive. Now you've got another hive that's got the new queen. and you can evaluate them. The new queen might get gobbled up on the mating flight, and then you've got no queens.
This is she's getting a mated queen, Keith, not a cell.
Getting a mated queen, not a cell. Okay, yeah. So mated queen, I would still do that, still introduce her. She might, you don't know, that might be a drone laying queen, or so it just means that you've now got 2 queens. Then you can do 2 hives, and then you just join them later on and choose the best queen, and then kill the other queen. So rather than relying on it all at once, but it really doesn't matter. The old books always said you wait 24 hours after you've killed a queen before you reintroduce, but that's fairly old.
Yeah, adding Keith is right, and the other advantage you have if you do a small split with just nurse bees, you don't really need any field bees to speak of because it's a very temporary thing. You can almost guarantee that those bees are going to accept that new queen. And once you're satisfied, she's evaluated and so forth, you can go and combine your small split with your colony after you've handled the original queen, whatever you might decide to do with it. And again, not guaranteed, but very close that you're going to have a successful introduction.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank Keith and Frank and Merle for really a lot of good pearls of beekeeping knowledge and practice. We have a tremendous resource in this hive. Oh my goodness, in this club to have some really experienced, knowledgeable beekeepers. So thanks, guys. And again, if you have questions, between now and next meeting, write them down, keep them in your head, and hopefully we'll get them answered in the Bee Gurus. So thanks, guys. So anyone's first meeting, usually I ask people to sort of stand up and introduce themselves. But if you're a new beekeeper to the CCBA and this is your first meeting, maybe you can type something in the chat box, just say who you are and where you're coming from, and Jack will sort of keep an eye on that and welcome everybody who's new. Despite coronavirus and social distancing, we've had a tremendous first 4 months with new members. We have 114 new members in 2020 in the first 4 months, so we're averaging about a new member a day. And I'd like to thank all the members for referring people to the club and being really welcoming. And again, welcome to the 114 new members. I would have never thought that we'd have that many in this age of social distancing. As you know, we have many helpful, experienced beekeepers. Usually we're doing this at meetings and meeting each other and giving advice. But I know the CCBA forum, the beginners forum on the CCBA website, and I'm sure a lot of mentoring is going on via emails and text. So again, if you're new, don't be afraid to sort of put something out there on one of the forums. No, I've never seen a mean response. I mean, some of the sites, people can get a little obnoxious with some of their responses, but I've not seen that at all this year. So again, please ask the questions. Don't be bashful. Usually we have fun social activities. That's kind of on hold right now. And again, my goal as being president of the club this year is to help people have healthy bees and happy beekeepers. And I hear it, I mean, I was out there, Garrett, the other day, and I'm thinking to myself, I've been doing this about 8-10 years or something like that. And I was getting stung and my queens were missing. And I was like, I got to keep the joy in this, because that's what it's all about. So again, welcome everybody. Anyone?
George,
we have 2 new members who have shouted out in the chat. Stephanie from Phoenixville is with us tonight, and Donna, who's from Havre de Grace, Maryland, and is a member of the Susquehanna Club as well, Susquehanna Beekeepers.
Welcome.
So they're both with
Charlie
us
down, but you guys have a great president and Charlie down there. So listen carefully to Charlie. He's got a lot of experience. So excellent. The quote of the month is, "My hive is queenless." As Keith said, most of your hives have, if you think you're queenless, you're probably swarm this month, you know, and give it time. You know, it's I usually say, definitely if there's cap brood still in the hive, give it time. If there's no cap brood in the hive, like Keith and Frank said, you can add a frame of cap brood just to hold it over a little bit. You can add a frame of open brood to see if they make a cell and check back in 2 days, or you probably can wait another week and there'll be a queen in there. I had a hive that, I don't know how it swarmed, but it swarmed or it did something, and it was not making any. There was no cap brood left, and I thought to myself, you know, this is a lost cause. I don't know what I did. So, and I've looked at it a couple times trying to find the virgin in there, and I couldn't find her. So I threw a frame of eggs in there. And this morning, it was in there about 2 or 3 days. I said, okay, I know what I'm gonna see. I'm gonna go back into that hive and I'm gonna see queen cells being formed, because I just messed this up somehow. And I went in and looked at that frame, and there was nothing on that. They did nothing to that frame. And I said, okay, I'm gonna go through this one more time, and I'm just gonna, you know, and then that time going through it, I found the virgin running around in there. So, you know, that frame of eggs can really be helpful diagnostically to what's going on inside your hive, and it's relatively simple to do. Now, if you have one hive and it's swarmed, you're kind of going to have a hard time finding a frame of eggs, unless you you know, go to the website and look at the member directory, or try to find some people close to you. And most beekeepers are wonderful people. You know, Tony and I were out at the yard trying to make the hive small out there this week. And one of the members, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. And one of the members was out there, and she was telling us that she had a hive that swarmed, the same situation, and she wasn't sure if it was going to requeen or not queen itself. Oh my goodness. Anyway, I'm sorry. So we ended up just pulling a frame of eggs out of one of the hives in the yard and gave it to her. And I said, go stick this in there and check back in 3 days, and that'll tell you what's going on. So again, we try to be a helpful bunch of people. So 85% of the time, the hive is going to requeen themselves after swarming, and you're going to be okay. So just a little bit of patience on that. 80% or so, I guess it depends on the year a little bit, of the honey crop is collected in this month. Most of us will recognize the flowers here, right? So on the left is the black locust. I have not seen any black locust on the I'm a little more down south on the Delaware, Pennsylvania border down here, and there's a ton of it on some of the roads, not on my road, of course, but there's a ton of it, and I've not seen it in bloom yet. This is the autumn olive, or the Elaeagnus that has a bee on it. This was taken today. It's starting to dry up a little bit. You can tell in the mornings that this is not blooming or the bloom's getting done, because you don't smell it when you walk out your door. Unfortunately, this is invasive and is really taken over a lot of the deforested areas. So I have an area behind me that's about 5 or 6 acres that all the trees were cut down for some unknown reason. And this is covering probably, this bush makes up probably 70% of the new growth in that area. So I have a heavy Elaeagnus smell at my house, but unfortunately it's a bit invasive, and I'm sure Jesse would say, get out with your shovel and start digging it up. And this is an amazing tree. I love the tulip poplar blooms. Again, as Keith said, you need a very tall ladder to get up there and start to see the bees in this, because those flowers tend to be at the top, but they are such beautiful flowers. And I think Keith has said that this does not give you a flow every year. This is the black locust is pretty reliable, and I guess the Elaeagnus is reliable, but the tulip poplar is a hit or miss. So hopefully this year we'll have some nice honey from there. You know, your hive can still collect honey if it's swarmed. It will collect less honey if it's swarmed, but don't give up hope if your hive swarmed that you're not going to get any honey. You will still get some, just not as much. So the agenda for today, for the meeting tonight, we'll have the Bee Gurus. We've already welcomed and introduced the new CCBA members. We're going to go into the officer reports briefly. We're going to get a little bit of member recognition in on some of the members doing incredible work in the past month. We're going to hear from Lauren about a little bit about the upcoming educational opportunities. Paul's going to go over what he's doing with his bees now. Mark's going to talk about what if my bees are attacking my neighbor and how to handle that. And Tom is going to follow that by talking about apiary insurance. And then since I've been making a lot of queens, I thought I'd just sort of go over how to make a few queens instead of how to make 60 or 70 queens. And again, at the end of the meeting, we got Gizmo. I'm going to try that again this month. So if you have something to share, please put that in the chat box now, so Mark and Jack are aware that you have something to share, and we can work on that at the end of the meeting. So again, thank you all for joining tonight. And I'm getting tired of these Zoom meetings. Honestly, it's a little bit of transparency here. I had a tough time getting up for this meeting this week because I said I've had enough of this, but I do appreciate everyone joining, and hopefully we'll be able to have some outdoor meetings at some point where we can sort of space the chairs and get back together. I'm hoping soon. Officer reports. I don't really have much to report. I'm going to be doing a bunch of the talking tonight, so I'm going to keep quiet. Anything to report on, Paul? Paul's going to give us what he's doing with his hives, but anything else from CCBA related?
No, I have nothing to report other than cold weather.
Thank you, Paul.
It's been very cold around here. Just sort of the last week, I had a freeze. The bird bath froze. The bees are like off their feed, so we're a little behind now, as opposed to a few weeks ago when I thought things were going to be really buzzing, but they're not. So we just have to be patient and hope that the frost and the freeze didn't kill all of our blooms.
Have you pulled any honey yet?
No, way too soon.
Got it.
I just have one hive that has, I put 3 supers on it, and it's starting to fill those up. But the other 3 hives, negligible amounts of honey.
Yeah, Paul.
By this time last year, I probably had 40 pounds.
I quote that Paul told me he made 700 pounds on 4 hives last year. So I said, Paul, you're going to do, what am I doing with my hives this month, every month to tell people how you did that. And Paul doesn't exaggerate. He's a straight shooter. So, get out your pen and paper and take notes on what Paul's doing. He's going to be back and talk about what he's doing with his hives this month. Mark, anything to report out on? Anything?
It's been extremely hot here. 95 degrees. Oh, sorry. I'm lying through my teeth. Same as Paul. It's been cold and nasty and had a swarm, and it has been interesting.
Paul's one of the members who uses, not Paul, Mark is one of the members who uses a lot of technology on his hives, and him and Ray. So if you're at all interested, in learning a little bit about what Mark's doing as far as monitoring his hives or keeping track of his hives, you can send him an email. He's always been more than willing to share and help out. Again, in the age of social distancing, we can't meet, but if you're interested in that kind of stuff, Mark is definitely a resource for that kind of cool technology stuff in hives. Jack, treasurers, Jack always has something to say about money or state of the affairs of the CCBA.
Right. So let's see who really pays attention to the monthly newsletter. Some of you who do may have noticed that somehow inadvertently the Treasurer's Report in the May monthly newsletter was a repeat of the April Treasurer's Report. So I'll take the time now to give you the May Treasurer's Report. In that report, I recapped our first quarter. In the first quarter, our general fund, we took in $30,983 and spent $35,852. So we had a net decrease of cash of $4,869 as of March 31st. However, that deficit would be offset by the refund that we were at that time still due from Westchester University for the deposit we had put on the facility for our annual conference, which of course got canceled because of COVID-19. Westchester has since sent us that check. So if you put that into play, for the first quarter, we came out about $300 to the positive for the quarter. For the month of April in the general fund, we took in $5,358 while spending $4,363 for a net increase in cash of $995, and that excludes that check from Westchester, which actually didn't arrive until May. Our three largest sources of revenue in the month of April were sales from the horticultural program of $2,455, membership dues of $935, and sales from the Queen program of $655. Our biggest costs in the month of April, aside from issuing the remaining refunds from attendees, vendors, and organizations who took program ads for the conference, aside from those refunds, our largest expenses in the month of April were cost of the plants purchased for the horticultural program of $2,046, and we purchased 5 new hives and other supplies for the CCBA apiary of $762, and we remitted to the Pennsylvania State Beekeepers Association dues for members of our club who joined the PSBA through the CCBA of $303, and Queen program expenses of $218. So the balance in our general fund as of the end of April was $25,320. We have another $10,000 on our reserve fund, and we have a current balance of $9,449 in our Save the Bees fund. And in next month's treasurer's report, I'll be talking about more detail about the activities in the CCBA fund. From a membership standpoint, as George pointed out, we are having, actually, as of today, more than one new member a day for this year so far. Through April, we had, in the month of April, we had 26 new primary members within 30 days. We also had 7 former primary members who reinstated themselves and 1 associate member who was promoted to a primary member. So as of April 30th, we had 443 primary members and 127 associate members. That's it.
Thank you, Jack. Any questions for Jack? We'll pause for
I've got one quick thing. Tom McKinney, would you chat me, please, so that I can figure out how to get you unmuted?
And if anybody has any questions for Jack, we got Jack on for a moment or two to answer any financial questions. Excuse me. Anything coming in, Mark, or Jack? You're muted, Jack.
Negative.
Sorry. Somebody asked how many people are participating in this webinar. We have 64 right now, I believe.
Excellent. Again, Jack's email is easy to find on the website. So if anybody has any particular questions for Jack,
treasurer at tescobees.org.
So for those new members who kind of hard to put this into perspective into previous years, this year we spent over $2,000 on plant sales, which is probably 3 times the amount of money that we spent in previous years on plant sales. So that was really nice to see. Part of those plant sales were subsidized by the Save the Bees fund. So we used some of the Save the Bees fund, which is a fund in memory of Peter Lintner, who was a horticulturist, a beekeeper, and a photographer, to give some subsidy to the plants that we bought to pass that savings on to you. And so there was a little bit of money from that fund that was used for that. And the plants were awesome, honestly. So those of you who ordered plants, and we're probably going to have a fall edition of that too. So, Tina will be communicating related to that when it comes out. So the goal of the CCBA is not to make money. I've told Jack I will unlike Keith, who was very good at at running efficient and effective programs and making money, I am good at spending money. So my goal for this year is to, at the end of the year, to have spent more than we've taken in. And hopefully not much more, though, because it's nice to have that money. So when we want to do things like bulk purchases of plants, or we're going to hear a little bit more about some other things that we're working on, that we have the funds to do that. Again,
thank you.
We'll spend it, but we'll spend it appropriately, right?
Yeah,
George?
of course we will.
Oh, is that Zinfandel? Or
yes, we'll buy the most expensive bottle, Paul.
oh, sorry, thought I was on mute.
Boards infidel for the office. No, just kidding.
I need that. Carpenter ants attacked my shed today. I had to clean everything out. It was horrible.
And you're giving them Zinfandel?
I should be hitting the bourbon.
Oh, I thought it was infidel. The infidel ants.
Hey, Mark, mute Paul, please. Okay, we're gonna move. We've had some interesting comments tonight, so we're gonna move on to Tina, who is the secretary and member relations. So this is a new position this year. Tina is our member relations. We have over 400, maybe 500 members. So if there's something that you think we should be doing, or you think that you don't like the way things are going, or you like the way things are going, Tina is the person that you want to communicate with. You can communicate to anybody, but Tina's that's her primary role outside of being secretary. And Tina also holds all the apparel, right? So the T-shirts, the socks, things like that. So anything to put on?
I've just been getting a lot of I love hearing from all the members. I get quite a few emails every day, but I do have a question that several members have requested that I find the answer to this. They want to know, and maybe Mark is the one to answer this. They're looking to have the link for these meetings, the Bee Chat and the monthly meeting. This link, can it be just posted on the website homepage? A lot of people at the last minute lose the email reminder or whatever. They just would like to just.
Yeah, actually, yes. So it's not a simple. The easy answer is yes. Of course we can. The harder answer is if we open it up and we hit our 100-person limit, then people that had previously signed up would not be able to join if they're coming in as 101 or 102. Again, we put that on the website on the inside that you can only see it after you log in. That way we're protecting ourselves, if you will. So it is something we have discussed a couple of times. Again, our biggest concern is if we hit 101 users, they can't get in even though they signed up maybe, yeah, all it
takes nowadays is one person to copy the webinar, the meeting ID and the password and put it out there on one of the Facebook sites, and the next thing you know, you have 300 or 400 people trying to log on to the meeting. I don't think that would happen, but in theory it would. But I hear the concern for sure, and let me talk. I'll talk to Jennifer, our web guru. She was unable to join tonight, but I will chat with her about maybe where we can potentially do it more securely.
And Craig Smith did point out that that may be a security issue and that he has been on a Zoom meeting that was crashed by, quote, bad people.
Yeah,
and that's the last thing we need.
I'm looking forward to the bad people to join us, but no, I'm just kidding.
No, you're really not.
Anyway, moving on. I've had my glass of wine, and I don't know if Lauren's on her second yet or not, but I feel like maybe I'll step out for a second to get my second. So busy as a bee, just to recognize some of the work being done out there. The Queen Committee, Steve, Joanne, and Chris and company. Again, we did not make our mated queen quota for this cycle, and that's directly on me, honestly. And I do apologize for that. We were like 4 queens short of what we sold. So they've been reaching out, offering people queen cells or queens at a later date. And you know, I know some people are very disappointed, and I completely understand, but we try to do it as fairly as possible, and we hopefully will have some increased successes coming up on that. So again, you know, in the past, we've mainly sold queen cells through that program. This year, we're trying to make 100 mated queens, and that's what we that's kind of what we projected to make and sell. So I've learned from Ray and company that I probably should have undershot that number a little bit. So again, I apologize, but I'll move on. But great work by Steve, Joanne, and Chris. They are spending many hours a week on coordination of this and making sure that it happens. It's not a small commitment to make 100 mated queens for sure. The census is closed. I'll make a comment on the census in a bit. You'll hear a little bit more about the census data in June at the June meeting, and that's Ray and the Citizen Science Committee. Jesse did a phenomenal job with the plants. Like I said, there were I don't know how many hundreds of plants that were sold and distributed out of her house, and I know her and probably Justin. I saw more of her kids in the picture than Justin, so I'm not sure how much Justin does with the plants, but I'm sure he's involved somehow with the plants. So again, many thanks to Jesse. I used to do that when I first joined. That was my job as horticulture sort of chair. So I know how much work that is. And Jesse did 3 times the amount of work that I ever did on the plant committee. So thank you, Jesse. We're going to hear from Lauren in a little bit on education, upcoming education things.
Hold on one second, George. Jesse, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes,
I've unmuted you. You can unmute yourself.
This is Justin, but it had something to do with what we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
Sorry. That was from the Q&A session.
Okay.
Lauren, you want to make a comment now about the upcoming educational?
Sure. Hi, everybody. The Education Committee has 2 enrichment presentations coming up. One is for a week from today, which would be on the 21st of May between 7 to 8:30, followed by an extra 30 minutes of Q&A. And actually, wait, can everybody hear me? Wait, George, can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry.
You're good.
Okay, I just want to make sure I don't just go blah, blah, blah. Okay, so the first presentation on the 21st is with Randy Oliver. And Randy Oliver is a well-known beekeeper in the industry. He has decades of experience. He and his sons manage over 1,000 hives. He's the owner and author of a website called Scientific Beekeeping. And he will be talking about how to manage varroa mites in the hive. So this is a great time to jump in on his knowledge, because the last thing we want is for a hive to die off due to being overwhelmed with varroa mites. So this would be a great one to attend, and it is a Zoom meeting just like tonight. And then the next one coming up in June is with the head of horticulture at the Jenkins Arboretum and Gardens in Devon, over in Devon, out by Wayne. And her name is Mrs. Madison Purcell. She's been the head horticulturalist there for a few years. And where this type of talk is for those who are interested in horticulture, she's focusing on using native plants throughout her pollinator meadow project. And she likes to research. She likes to share her experience with others. She's got a passion for plants, and she is also a beekeeper. So she's very excited to share her pollinature, she calls it, pollinature gardening ideas with everyone.
She is also a member of the CCBA.
Oh, yay! That's right. That's right. And so that's going to be on June 4th. And that will also be like 7 to 8:30 on a Zoom session, similar to this, with some Q&A afterwards. The other thing that's in the works is there's been an interest, especially with social distancing and the schools basically breaking for the remainder of the year, to offer some educational Zoom sessions to a variety of all ages. We're talking like 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, you know, all the way up through high school. It is a project that's being undertook, but it'll start off slow, but it'll catch on. If you guys have any ideas or any worksheets, you know, feel free to reach out and send them, you know, our way, and they'll filter to me. If you're not sure who to send it to, you know, just say, get it to education, and we'll run with it. And that's it.
Great, thank you, Lori. Mark, are we going to set that up at the Randy Oliver as a webinar that you'll need to register for, I assume?
Yes, that is correct.
So I don't think that's gone out yet, Tina, right? I don't think that's gone out to membership yet. It should be going out shortly if it's not gone out yet. Is Jamie?
Thought it had, but okay.
Say that again, Mark. I'm sorry.
I thought it had gone out, but
it may have.
be,
I can't keep track.
Okay.
We'll send it out again if just to be sure. Is Janie? Can anyone see if Janie's on the meeting tonight?
Right. Let me see if I can find her.
I'm not sure if she's on tonight or not.
She was on earlier, but she does not appear to be. Oh, there she is. Okay. Allow to talk. So you can unmute. You can unmute yourself now, Janie.
Do you want to just talk about your Save the Bees sub working group?
Sure. There's a working group we kicked off about 2 weeks ago, looking at the Save the Bees Fund, brainstorming on ideas on community engagement and where we might want to take the funds that were put in memory for Peter and use them to the best possible use. So we had our first meeting with a bunch of brainstorms and some action items, and we're going to come together next week to continue to move that forward. And hopefully in the next month or so, we'll come back to you with here's some ideas and some of the things that the board will present to the board and see where we want to go. So kicking that off, and it's a great working group. So let us know if you're interested.
Thanks, Janie.
George, real quickly, the link for the Zoom presentation or Zoom webinar for Randy Oliver went out. Tina sent it out May 7th at 10:20 a.m.
Okay. Tony does an amazing job at the apiary. He really keeps those bees really healthy there, and just great work by Tony. Tony will give you anything, and really a dedicated member and devoted club member. He's wonderful. I can't say enough about Tony. And he provides meat. I'm hoping that we can do the Bee Gala in September, but if not, we'll have to figure out how to get meat to everybody. Walt and Kathy do an amazing job with the mentoring and the apprentice program. Walt, is Walt on tonight, Mark?
He is. He is, and he has been unmuted.
Hey, Walt, do you want to make a comment or two about either mentoring or apprentice? That's okay. Again, these are the mentoring program. Anybody can contact Walt if they just want somebody to connect with that can maybe show up at their apiary once in a while, answer questions via email. The apprentice program is a little more structured. That's for either people that don't have bees or people that haven't successfully overwintered bees yet. And that's really where the apprentice goes to the teacher's apiary twice a month and really has a more structured learning one-on-one environment. So again, if anyone's interested, I hear Walt gets a ton of emails because I put that on the homepage of the website, because I do believe that the best way to learn anything is probably through an apprentice or a mentoring program. So I definitely am thankful to have two really strong leads in that. And along with that is the beginners program. Tom and Jack have stepped up and made this happen virtually the last 2 months. So kudos to Jack and Tom.
With your lead, George.
With my push. Not my lead, my push. You guys are leading it. I'm just pushing the virtual agenda of it. So again, and I'm sure I've left out people. The woodworking group has been doing things. This is our committees. I sort of structured 13 committees when I started presidency. I wanted the work and I wanted the ideas to come through the committee work. There are 13 of them. Many of you are on a committee. You should intermittently hear from your committee chairs, committee leads. I know it's been a little tough with this social distancing. Again, it's a great way to get involved. It's a great way. You know, if you raise your hand in this club and have an idea and willing to do the work, you're golden. You know, that's the way we advance the agenda and come up with ideas. So right now, some of our new committees are a little understaffed, honestly. So Lauren, who we heard from tonight, is doing program and education. If you're a teacher, if you're into education, send Lauren an email and let her know who you are, and if you want to get involved, she's delightful to work with. Surely a future president of the club one day. No pressure, Lauren. Janie's doing our community engagement work. This is a new committee. I'm very passionate about trying to do more work with our community and helping somebody. I'm not sure who to help or how to help them, but I think there's potential there. Ray Walker's leading citizen science, and Keith is leading our advanced bee guru group. So again, they're the committees that could use a few extra people.
Walt, are you on now?
I am. Can you hear me?
We got you. Go ahead.
Okay, so yes, for mentoring and apprenticeship, we need more mentors and more teachers. A lot of our mentors and teachers are becoming overloaded. Some of them have up to 4 apprentices, which is a bit much. So for those of you who don't think you know anything, you actually do, and realize there is the whole club, you know, me included, and the other mentors and teachers that you can lean on to help other people. So a lot of the new people coming in have basic questions that, you know, a second or a third year person can easily answer. And if you can't, you can always lean on someone else to help the person that you're mentoring.
Thank you, Walt. And Kathy, I know, does a lot of work with Walt on that program, so don't want to forget her. Yeah, send a chat, send a message if you want to join a committee. It's really easy to do. Just raise your hand and say you want to help out. I'm gonna just a quick cool tip of the month. I've done a lot of grafting. Can you guys see that? No.
We see the screen, but not the video. Now we see you.
I got it. So this was a really cool video of grafting, and he's using a Chinese, or she's using a Chinese grafting tool, and it shows you really how easy it is, and don't be intimidated by it. You know, it's really just sort of scooping little tiny worms up basically, and grafting. There's lots of ways to make queens, and we're going to get to that in a little bit, but that's the if you do undertake some grafting or try grafting, you know, that's as simple as it is. So it's the same motion over and over and over again, and just does a nice job in showing the size of the larvae that you want to graft. It's basically a thing where you just kind of push it down along the side of the comb, just like, I don't know why he's got like a little wedge cut out of the tip. I'm not sure why he has that, maybe. And then you just sort of push it down, and then the tip bends on the edge of on the bottom of the cell, and then you just go right underneath the larvae, and then you just pull back up just pull straight back up. So it's really quite a simple technique to graft. Again, you can practice on the bigger larvae, but the idea is to scoop ones that are less than 24 hours old, and they're really they're thread-like, honestly. So they're real tiny, and those are nice larvae, honestly. So they all are sitting in a nice pool of royal jelly. So when they're a little wetter, they're a little easier to scoop. And it just sort of was a nice, clear video of just how to graft, and it's really, you can see, there you go. There he's going for that nice small one. I don't know why he's got a notch cut out of that. I don't know if there's a purpose for that or not, or it's just an older tool. And just down along the side, then underneath until it's on the tip, and then right back out.
With that notch cut in, I would guess that the tips bend a little easier.
Yeah, maybe that's what it's for. Some people take a little sandpaper or a little steel wool and just sort of file the tip down of the Chinese grafting tool so it bends a little bit, because you do want that tip to be a little bendable. So when you go underneath when you push down, the tip of that Chinese grafting tool bends. So maybe that's part of how he did that. I don't know. There was no audio to this video, so it was just a nice, clear picture. And then showing another clear picture, just showing how you just sort of push it off, and you don't want to flip it over. So you just kind of push it off, and that's all it is in the bottom of their JZBZ cup. So that's the lip around the cup that you'll just sort of, if you're getting queen cells, you'll get that little plastic cup with the queen cell hanging down, and you'll take that lip and sort of either put it in between two frames or push it into some brood. So it really is, it's like any procedure. Once you try it a couple times, and once you do it a couple times, you'll get good at it. It's really not that hard to graft. Eyesight's a little bit of an issue, but I tell you, you could almost pull these larvae out of the cups without even seeing the larvae, honestly. Once you know kind of where the area is that the age larvae that you want, you can just go into the cup. You can go into the cells blindly and scoop the larvae. And you don't want to flip them over. And you ideally will pick them up from the back of the seed. The larvae should be a comma, the size of a comma, and you want to pick it up from the back of the larvae. So, we talk a lot about grafting right now, and I felt like for the beginners who've never seen what grafting is, or just saw a nice video of just taking out larvae and using them for queen rearing. So just a quick video of grafting. Let me get back to, here I go. Where do I get my bees? Hopefully everyone has bees right now. I guess most people right now are catching swarms, and that's where they're getting their bees from. I don't know if there's been more swarms or more people are home to see their swarms. I'm not sure, but a lot of people catching lots of swarms. We really try to talk about getting local bees and either getting swarms that are hopefully local from local bees, or buying nukes that are local, or getting overwintered nukes that are local, and trying our best our can to get that. Again, their bees. Beginner options, I already talked a little bit about the beginner's course. The beginner's course this year has about 26 or 27 people in it. It meets the second Tuesday of the month from 6:30, I should say, to 8:30 for about 2 hours for 8 months. Again, you can go to the CCBA website, chescobees.org to register. And then the apprentice program, I've promised everybody, all the apprentices who finish the apprentice program, that means that your teacher will sign off that you've attended all the sessions that you had scheduled, and that you learned the skills and could show the skills. Come if you finish it next spring, you'll get a nucleus colony at the completion of the program. I have to make a whole bunch of nucleus colonies thanks to Walt's work, so no problem. The census, really quick on the census, this is the first, probably not the first time, but first time in a while that we've done a census. The purpose of the census was to define who the CCBA is, the practice of our beekeepers, and the health of our bees. We had 200 primary members complete their census, 51% of the primary members, so we did get the majority by 1%, so thank you. 90% of the responses were submitted electronically through the website, which is phenomenal. It really shows the power of the website when we figure out how best to use it. The census is now closed, so we appreciate everyone contributing. And Ray and the Citizen Science Group will be next month. We'll be doing a presentation on the results and presenting what we learned through completion of the census. So it is very interesting. So please put that on your calendar for next month. So I'm always interested in how to get 700 pounds of honey from 4 colonies. So Paul's going to tell us what he's been doing with his hives recently.
And just for the record, George, that was 750.
I will change that right now.
But there was just a question asked, George, about your grafting. Said, what happens when you move that larva to a cup? Why do you call it a graft?
I don't know why they call it a graft, honestly. Where that term came from, I'm not sure why they call it a graft. Does anyone know on the panel?
But then you move it to a hive that has just lost their queen and or you've tricked it into thinking that you lost your queen, and those bees are going to raise those young larvae as queens.
Yeah, I didn't really explain it that carefully, but
Yep.
Correct, Paul. Obviously, correct.
Okay, so what I'm going to be doing with my bees this month, well, I finished with equalizing the number of bees per hive. I used an overproducing hive, and I took an awful lot of frames of sealed brood out of my cypress hive and put it into my other 3 hives to bring their strength up. So now everybody is pretty much equalized. And interestingly, the cypress hive is cutting down with production, but I'll talk about that in a minute. I've also, I'll do a sugar roll. I've done a sugar roll on one of the hives, and I did not find any mites. But if you want to treat for mites, first do a sugar roll and see if you need to. It's a pretty easy method, and be sure to dissolve the sugar in a pan of water, and you'll see a lot more mites that way. But I haven't seen any this year so far. I have taken green drone frames out of my hives, frozen them for a day, and then put them back in the hive as part of my IPM strategy to compete with the mite. And so I started doing this on the 3rd of April. And that's when I had the first full frame of drone comb on the green plastic frames. So far I've had 6. So just about every week when I go in there, I'll find 1 or 2 hives that have produced a full frame of drone comb on those green plastic frames. Well, keep swapping those out and replacing it with the frozen one. And when I replace the frozen one, I just use the capping scratcher to give them access to the drones. And then I put the frozen comb right in there, and they can recycle all that protein or kick out the ones that they don't want. Mostly I'll try to be getting ready this month for a stellar honey flow like I had last year. May was a great month for me. I had about 40 pounds by the 2nd week in May, and 110 pounds by May 22nd. And then in 1 week, 140 pounds last year. On May 29th, I harvested 140. So that's not going to happen this year with the cold, but I'm getting ready. And one of the things you can do to get ready is make sure you have enough supers on, and make sure that the bees have access to the frames. And one thing I recommend is staggering your woodenware. So by that I mean offsetting the boxes. So if you have a 2 deep and then multiple super systems, for your second deep, pull that back an inch, and then push your first super forward an inch, and then pull your second super back an inch, and so forth. So in other words, the worker bee who's bringing back nectar and pollen doesn't have to hit the landing board and then try to climb up 5 feet in the dark. He can just come in at any level that he wants. So the idea is to prevent your hive from being honey-bound by those workers dumping off the nectar in the brood box down below. Let them get to where they want to put it in the supers. And if they put it in the supers, then it'll save you a lot of aggravation. If you don't want to pull it back, and sometimes with the cold nights, I've taken some thin strips of wood and placed it over the openings to keep the heat in the hive. But you don't have to pull it back an inch. You can just stagger the supers with a cedar shim. You know, a cedar shim gives them about a bee space, and they can crawl right in there. But that's a good way to increase your honey flow by giving them access. And it also helps to give them ventilation when they want to dehydrate the nectar and turn it into honey. Next, you want to look at making nukes this month. Nukes as backup for queens that all of a sudden go missing or that swarm. You can take advantage of the bee's tendency to swarm to make a nuke. So I've made 3 nukes so far this year. The first one I made on April 23rd. I took eggs and larvae from my cypress hive because it had a lot of excess bees, and just put the eggs, 2 frames of eggs and larvae into a nuke, and an empty frame and 2 frames of food. And I took it down to the CCBA apiary and put it up down there. And so the idea is that virgin queens that come out will mate with the stellar drones that are around the area. Keith assures me there are 40 drone hives within a mile of the CCBA apiary. All these drones have great genetics, so I expect my virgin queen to go out and mate with these great drones and come back and start a brood of her own in that nuke, and then I'll remove it to my own apiary. So when I check
there is a question for you, Paul. How do you keep
Yes.
rain from getting into your hives when you stagger the boxes?
It's not an issue. The bees actually will thank you. They like the water. And usually there's an overhang on the cover, and the outer cover will usually overhang enough. But I've never had an issue with rain going in there. Not that I know of anyway. I just don't worry about it. It's only an inch, and maybe the bees need it. In fact, during the summer months, I keep a Boardman feeder in my entrance filled with water, and the bees take it all the time. So I think they're always on the lookout for water. But if you don't like that concept, if you think they're getting too wet, then just shim it with a cedar shim. So one nuke I made by transplanting eggs and larvae and brought that to the club apiary. Another time I did a demery on my cypress hive. So the bees 3 stories up in the 3rd deep decided to make some queen cells. So I pulled a frame, 2 frames that had queen cells on them, put those into a nuke box, and along with empty frame and a frame of food, and brought that down to the club apiary. And I think that was on the 7th of May. So you can do it with eggs and larvae and have them select the queen cell to make, or you can take a queen cell from a hive that is getting ready to swarm and put that in a box and make a nuke that way. And then today, there's a 3rd way of making a nuke. I went into my new hive which last year I called it the new hive because it was an aggregation of 4 stacked nuke boxes that I said, this is silly. I put them into 2 deeps. And that hive is producing very well this year. It's got 3 supers on it, and they're starting to get heavy. So whatever they're finding, they're doing it well. The other 3 haven't achieved that level of success. But when I went in there today, I found queen cells up in the top, and I found an alarming number of queen cells. So I was assured that that hive had already swarmed. In fact, one of the queen cells had its cap off, which meant that the queen was just about to emerge. So I figured that queen was long gone. But when I got down to the bottom deep, there was the queen on frame number 8. So I plucked her right out of there, the whole frame, and put her into a nuke, along with some other frames of sealed brood and some food and empty frame. And then I had another nuke. And then I took her away because she was ready to swarm. So I believe I just stopped the hive from swarming. I created a nuke, and she already had a virgin queen in the process of being born. And so they'll mate, and within a month, I'll have a new queen in there. The hive is full of bees. They're bringing in the most nectar of any of my 4 hives. So I don't see a problem at all with that. And I know Keith has responded that once you build up a mass of bees in a hive, a queen can be counterproductive because the bees will be trying to feed all those larvae that the queen is producing, whether you'd rather have them just store the nectar for you and turn it into honey. So that may be a good thing. So there's 3 things you can do to make a queen. Start with eggs, start with queen cells, or capture the queen and put her in the nuke. 3 ways to make a nuke. So it's important also to have this month to have a good swarm strategy. So that was just one strategy that I used today. I took the queen out and put her in a nuke. So that hive is not going to swarm. And it depends on the density of bees in the hive. I did a demery on the cypress hive because that was my heaviest producer so far this year as far as bees go. So that's the only hive I did the demery on. So I sequestered the queen down below, and I keep moving sealed brood down and eggs up. But when I went in there this week, the queen must have been a little off put by all that moving around of her brood. She was in the brood box, but there was only one frame that had eggs and larvae in it. So might have been the cold weather. She's just maybe feeling too stressed. She took a little time off, and she's not laying as much.
Maybe she had COVID.
Let's hope not. So those are all kinds of things that you have to play by ear. It's all part of their cowboy beekeeping. You have to be receptive to what the bees are trying to tell you. And lots of things will be thrown at you out of the blue. I didn't expect to find all those swarm cells in my new hive, but I immediately corrected that by sequestering the queen. With the cypress hive, the queen has decided not to produce, but I think that for right now, it's probably just a cold, maybe some warm days, she'll be feeling better. And let's see, what was the other thing? With my other hives, I've continued to move. I've used the Herman Werner technique on managing swarms by taking advantage of the fact that the queen always wants to move up. So I take sealed brood and I move them down, and I take empty frames and I move them up. So that seems to satisfy the other hives for right now. And what I found today in the 3 other hives that I didn't do the demery is that when I pulled the 2 boxes off onto separate boxes, I talked about that in the newsletter. I took it from what Keith did during his demery. I just move 2 empty deeps onto the lawn behind the hives, and then I take each of my 2 deeps and put them onto the empty deep. That quiets the bees right down. The forager bees just buzz around the landing board in confusion, and I can work on these gentle bees. It's a nice technique, I think. So when I was in there today, I noticed that the bottoms seemed to be free of sealed brood and had a lot of empty space, whereas the upper deeps were full of sealed brood. So all I did was a reversal. Instead of taking out 4 frames of sealed brood and making space down below and moving too many frames around and maybe injuring a queen, I just swapped the boxes. Once I went through them and found that there were sealed brood, four frames of sealed brood in the upper deeps and nothing in the lower deeps, then I just did a reversal. So that's a good technique too. And that's part of swarm management. Put the sealed brood down below and keep the upper deep free and clear for your queen to make new eggs, and she'll be more happy and think there's more space up there. Okay, that's all I have to say. So get ready for a big honey flow as soon as it warms up. And good luck with the cowboy beekeeping.
So we do have 2 questions. One from Jen. If you're going to use drone frames and you want to let your chickens have the drone's mites as a treat, do you still have to freeze, or can you skip that step?
Oh no, the chickens probably like it warm.
Yeah, I froze mine and put it out there, and the chickens had at it. Nice cold treat. Yeah, they really don't care.
Chickens don't care.
Yeah. And then the second question from Kim Christie: if my drone frame is a quarter cap, should I take it out anyway?
Sure. If it's a quarter cap, that means the rest of them are probably filled with larvae and probably have mites in them.
How often do you inspect, Paul? How often? What's your frequency of inspection this time of year?
Oh, every week.
Every week. Excellent. Well,
in May, you cannot afford to not do it every week because there's too much going on. Mm-hmm. Either the honey builds up too fast, or the bees put the honey in the wrong place, or you're going to swarm and you need to keep track of the queens, and you need to move the sealed brood down. So yeah, that spring buildup is the most critical period. After you get the honey in and it's midsummer, then you can relax and do every 2 weeks.
You know, when I hear someone who's collecting 750 pounds on 4 colonies, I think 3 things have to be right for that to happen. One is the beekeeper's got to be right, for sure. So, you know, that's years and years of experience and knowing what to do and when to do it and how to do it, and that takes time. Secondly, your genetics has to be right, and obviously Paul's had the same local bees for a while, and when he needs new bees, he's got a plan. He's taking them out to the apiary to get them mated well. So that's factor number 2. And factor number 3, he must live in a decent area. You know, I've never been to Paul's apiary, but it must be surrounded by black locust and tulip poplars, and you know, that's got to be a factor. So when you line those 3 things up, you're going to get 750 pounds in 4 colonies. It is possible.
Amen. And pay attention to what everybody said at these meetings, because that's how I learned.
Yeah, and I think
Merle has told me tricks. Warren has told me tricks. Keith has told me tricks. All kinds of people. Just pay attention.
Excellent. Thanks, Paul. Bees attacking neighbors. So Mark was sharing a story recently. So unfortunately, that's a worry for many of us. So I want him to sort of talk about his experience and how he handled it briefly. You're muted, Mark. Mark, you're muted. I can't hear you.
I know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Remember 6 screens, and I'm trying to find my mouse again. Yeah. All right. So my next door neighbor kind of came over with some reluctance and said, "Hey, we had a little bit of a problem. Our 4-year-old son got stung by your bees the other day, and one on the wrist, and which had crawled under his sleeve, and it stung him because the material came down and just disturbed the bee, and it stung him. And then once somewhere else, exposed skin. And so as I'm researching as to what to do to keep this, what you may have noticed in my background here is my bee yard now has a fence that runs 6 feet high. And one of the things that can do is it can help keep the bees from rolling across the yard at knee level or eye level for a 3 or 4 year old. So that can keep them high. So that certainly is one technique or one possibility. Jack pointed out that if I had asked them if it was truly a bee, and in fact I did ask them, was this a bee? And they said, well, one of them certainly was because we pulled the stinger out. And so yes, that was a bee. And then again, in talking to Jack, he said, well, did you confirm that they were your bees? Because at least in his case, he collars all of his bees. So I've started doing that. So I put little collars on every bee. And so if someone gets stung in the neighborhood, I'll ask them if the bees have collars on them. Of course, I am kidding. That's not something that one should do for those of you who are beginning beekeepers. So what can you do? So number one, number one, was it a bee? Did you get stung multiple times by the same critter? It wasn't a bee. Did you get stung and you have no sign of a stinger? It might not have been a bee. Would you please accept my apologies along with this quart of honey? Oftentimes that builds a very nice fence. Speaking of fences, you could build a fence, as I have done. That might help. And again, the collars, I think, is really, really, really important. But also educating not only the adult neighbors, but the kids. They ranged from age 11 down to age 4, and talking to them about bees and what to look for, and don't slap at them and don't squish them and those sorts of things. And providing some education, I think, also helps a lot. These folks are very much, and when I said, hey, we're getting bees a couple of years ago, they were all for it. This is great. It's helping the environment. It's helping bees. They're endangered, yada, yada, yada. So they are definitely on board with it. It's just, what can I do to help? Now, Tom McKinney, if you're on the call here, I think you're up next, but I don't know which Tom you are. So if you would chat me, we can open up your line so that you can speak.
The one thing, Mark, is that some bees, for whatever reason, may be more defensive than others, right? So if you kind of know that you have a colony that tends to run hot, you can move that colony or move that colony and requeen that colony.
Or requeen, yeah, exactly. That's what I was getting ready to say. In fact, I did that 2 years ago, or 3 years, a couple of years ago. I had a really hot colony that I was getting stung through my gloves, through my suit. They were and they followed me. There's a video I've got where I'm in the front of the house, 100 yards away from the back of the house where the bees are, at the back of the property, and they're all over me. I've got hundreds of bees on my back. Well, they shouldn't be following me that far. And I requeened that one, and they calmed right down. So yeah, good point. Thank you.
Do we have Tom unmuted?
I don't.
George, could I add something?
Absolutely.
Please.
Okay. A lot of bee complaints are generated because of bees searching for water. And if anyone in the area has swimming pool, hot tubs, and so forth, the bees will really seek that water out, and particularly because of the chemicals which are added, the chlorine and so forth is attractive to the bees. And Paul's technique of adding the Boardman feeder with water can go a long ways to mitigating that problem. Or you could I think Justin, Chris, you've noticed maybe on Facebook or on the, I think it was Facebook, had some really attractive bee watering apparatus. That could be a really good addition to help cut down on bee complaints. And as Mark mentioned, everyone's for bees until someone gets stung.
So there's that comment here. I've taught kids and people to blow bees off rather than swatting. I guess that's not swatting the bees or the neighbors. I think that's what whoever 441 button. There we go. The other thing is, if you notice on this hive right here, there is a large planter bottom, and it is full of river rock. And I haven't finished it yet, but it has water in it, so the bees don't drown and they can drink. And it's right there. And I've got a little 12-volt pump that I'm going to put in with basically run water through it all the time, and I'll be running that off of one of my rain barrels. And so that's going to be my external watering source, if you will.
That's like a bee spa.
It's like a bee spa, yeah.
And powered by solar, right?
A little massage, a Mai Tai if you want, some smoothies. Yeah.
Any luck in getting Tom unmuted yet? I know.
Tom, I have unmuted both Toms that were on. So okay. Tom, if you...
Guys, I just spoke to Tom McKinney. He was having trouble. He couldn't log in. So okay. I just emailed him the link again. So hopefully he'll join us very shortly. But he was not either of the Toms that was logged on.
Got it.
So I'm going to keep moving, and we'll get back to Tom. Just as we are running our local queen program, our objective was to make 80 mated queens. Most of you are getting mated queens this Saturday who've ordered them. Unfortunately, a few are not. We're selling mated queens and queen cells on the website. It's been very popular. Again, consider queen cells or mated queens and helping us follow the outcomes of this. Not only are we trying to give you locally mated queens, but we're also trying to track the longevity and the productivity of these queens. So it's been a really cool project. We have a lot of members who are very committed and engaged in doing this, and we again appreciate your understanding. April and May was a really tough month to start mating boxes and to get queens mated. So we're doing pretty good, and we'll do better moving forward. Again, most beekeepers agree that it's ideal to have local survivor queens in your hives. We heard a little bit of this from Paul tonight. Ideally to have queens that produce honey in your hive. Ideal to have gentle bees, as we heard about, so they don't attack your neighbors. And it's ideal that they display some anti-varroa properties, either removing infected brood, biting pads of mites, self-grooming, and low mite counts. And really, it's ideal for you to select the bees you like, to be engaged in that process. I mean, Paul knows everything that's going on with his bees. He knows his queens. He knows how they behave. He has names for his hives. There's no doubt that that's all important and enjoyment of it. And somehow he's limited to 4 or 5 hives too. So he's not running hundreds of hives either. So again, think about this, and we're trying to help people get local queens in their hives. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Everyone can raise a few queens. We heard a little bit about this tonight. There is no need to graft. You don't need to get all these, even though grafting's a pretty cheap hobby, honestly. A Chinese grafting tool's $1, a grafting frame's like $8. So it's a cheap thing to do if you want to get into it and try. All you need is a light and a Chinese grafting tool and a couple of JZBZ cups, honestly. But there's no need to graft. There's no need to, you hear these starter finisher colonies, you really don't need that. And there's no need to say I can or I'm just a beginner. There's two things. I'm giving away a little bit of the survey results early. I apologize, Ray. But there's two things that beginners should do that you're not. You know, one is to make nukes, and two is to make your own queens. You don't need to be a 5-year or 10-year beekeeper to start doing this. If you like the hobby, if you want to not be buying bees every year, the answer is to make nukes and make queens, and that's how you're going to sustain yourself for sure. So what if you want to make a few queens? I'm just going to give you one way tonight. It's the way I know best. I've gotten some old books. There's probably, I don't know how many ways to make queens, like 10, 20 different methods to use to make queens, but they all basically involve three things. They involve a queenless group of bees, preferably young ones. They all involve having some larvae that's about 1 day old. And they all involve having food, pollen, and nectar. When Paul was saying he makes up his splits, or he makes up his, listen to what he said. He says, I have bees, I have cap brood, I have food, and I have some frames to lay in. So he's got all the things that are necessary to make an effective split, or however he's going to choose to make his queens and give his queens a good start. I'm going to talk a little bit about a cloak board. Keith taught me the use of the cloak board, and I become really interested in it, and I think it's a pretty cool, simple tool to use in making queens. So what's a cloak board? Cloak board's pretty simple device. If you have a queen excluder, you can make a cloak board tonight if you wanted to. All it is basically a queen excluder that has a shim on 3 sides around it. The shim the height is about 3/4 of an inch tall, and the width is as wide as you want to make it. You can make it 3/4, you can make it 1 inch, you can make it 2 inches. It really doesn't make too much of a difference how wide the shim is. And you can attach the 3 pieces of wood to the queen excluder using flathead screws. So you know, you can get fancy and make the joints fancy like Ike does, but you really don't have to. It's basically 3 sides attached to an excluder. And then you need what we call a slide, which is a piece of material to fit inside the shimmed queen excluder. So you could pick out the material. We have lots of jokes about political signboards work well if it's election time. A piece of cardboard would work well. A piece of sheet metal would work well. Whatever you choose that would fit in there, and it's got to fit snug. That's one of the things that I'm going to tell you what the queen cloak board's for. But you definitely want to seal off that space effectively. So how to set up your hive so you can make a few queens. So you're going to go into the lowest box, and that's where you're going to put the queen. You're going to put a few frames of cap brood. You're going to put some John comb and some food. That's going to sound familiar, right? You're going to have the elements of what you need down there: queen, the cap brood, and John comb. You're going to spin that box, that lower box, to face 180 degrees in the opposite direction. So initially that hive was facing towards you, that bottom. So you're going to take that box, the bottom box, and you're going to spin it around so that it's now in the opposite direction. And then you're going to add the cloak board, or the queen excluder cloak board, which is now one thing, on top of that single box with the entrance facing the original opening of the hive. So the bees are basically going to think that that is now their new opening to the hive. But when they go in that opening, they're going to be going into the upper portion of the hive instead of the lower portion of the hive. On top of the cloak board, you're going to add any honey supers if you have. They're not essential. And then the top box is going to be all the frames of open brood, eggs and larvae, and frames of food to flank open brood on each side, and a feeder if you want to extra feed it. And you want to have an entrance at the top of your hive. Now, this is something that I'd consider doing in you know, Paul said this month, end of this month, June, when you're really kind of winding down the honey flow and you're going to start thinking about making some splits or new hives. This is what how I'd set it up. So it's pretty easy to do, to set up. The setup, you're gonna close the bottom entrance. So after you reverse the hive, spin that lower box around, you're gonna take the entrance on the lower box and close it up. So the bees in the bottom box have no way to leave the hive now without going up. So it basically is forcing bees to move up through the cloak board. And the open brood and the feeder are attracting bees to the top box. So the idea of what you're trying to do is you're trying to get as many bees in that top box as possible. I feed, I don't put a feeder in there. I feed a 1-to-1 and pollen sub to the consistency of pancake mix onto the top bars of frames in the top box. So that's what I do, because I go in there daily and put fresh food in there and putting some protein. Obviously, if you're just putting liquid feed into a feeder, it's more sugar. And again, royal jelly has a fair amount of protein in it. And again, it depends on the protein stores in the hive, but I always think some extra protein's a good idea. So, so basically, you have the queen and some cap brood and some food below. You have the cloak board. Some people will put, that's the white thing that faces down is the slide. So what they're showing is when the bees are coming back, because they're used to coming back and going in the bottom of the hive, they're coming back and sort of hitting that whiteboard and sort of helping them to get up into the upper box at this point. And that's why that's there. So on day number 0, when you're ready to make your queens, you're going to place the slide into the cloak board. So you're going to put that divider in. So you basically, when you put that divider in, you're shutting the queen pheromone off from the bottom to the top of the hive. So the top of the hive now thinks it's queenless. Now you're going to open the entrance to the bottom box. So now the bees are going to be able to, because you don't want to leave those bees stuck in the bottom box. So when you put the divider in, they have no way out. So you're going to open the back end of that hive. So they're going to fly out the back and come in the top. So again, you're basically forcing bees to the top of the box. And make sure the feeder is full and feed mix on the top of the box. This is how I do our queen rearing too. At this point, when I put the cloak board in, 24 hours later, I'm going to usually put the grafts in. But you have open brood up there. So as soon as you put the cloak board in there, they're going to take that open brood and they're going to start making emergency queen cells on the frames that you gave it without grafting. In 24 hours, they're going to start whatever queen cells they want to start up there, and you're going to remove the cloak board at that point. So once they start those cells, they're going to finish them, and you're going to remove the cloak board, and the whole hive is going to be involved in finishing those hives. When I make my feed, that's pancake mix. So that's the consistency I'm trying to get at. That's 1-to-1 and pollen sub, sort of in a mixture that sort of pours, but is sort of slow to pour. And I just put that on the top bars of the frames. Day number 5, you're going to be checking for cap queen cells at the top of the hive. Remember, queen development, as Keith said earlier, 0 to 3 days, it's an egg. 4 to 8 days, it's an uncapped larvae. 9 to 16 days, it's capped pupae. You know, and if you check in 5 days and nothing has started, you really haven't lost anything. You know, your hive is still complete with a queen. You haven't done a split that now is queenless. You don't have to combine anything back. Chances are they're going to start something, but every once in a while there's something that's gone wrong, and you haven't really messed up your hive because of it. Again, somehow when you don't make any queen cells, somehow the top colony did not think it was queenless. So either your cloak board, the slide wasn't completely in, or somehow the queen got above, or you have a virgin queen in your hive, or there's something in there that because if you have open eggs and larvae at the top and you shut that off, they're going to make cells on one, if not more, of the frames that you put up there.
George, you have a couple of questions here.
Oh, sure.
So let's see, once the queen cells are capped, aren't they going to swarm?
No. So for some reason, I guess it's possible that the queen below is going to swarm, but I've never seen that happen. So I don't worry about this hive swarming. I do want to get those. I do want to get that frame out before the queens emerge. The new queens emerge, because then you're going to have a war between the virgins that are coming out and the virgin above and the queen below. So at some point before those cells emerge, you want to get them out of the hive. But I've never had this setup swarm on me. But it's a good question.
Okay, and then a second question. So when my box is full, can I pull a frame to give me extra space to work?
Can I pull a frame to give you extra space for work? Yeah, I mean, you could set the top box up with 9 frames if you want. I'm not sure if I really understand the question, Mark.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, Kim, if you can expand on that, I'll pass that on.
I apologize. I'm not getting it. So day number 10, after starting the process, you have decisions to make. You can leave the top box on the original hive until the queen has emerged, mated, and laying. So it is possible that that queen will emerge, it'll destroy the other cells that are up there, it'll go out on a mating flight, it'll come back and start laying in that top box, and you'll have a 2-queen hive going on. That is possible. I don't know if I would do that. Sometimes there may be a benefit of that if you don't want another hive. Now you have 2 queens. You can let those 2 queens fight it out. The younger one's probably going to win, and that you'll have a new queen going into the winter. So that's a possibility if you wanted to fool around with this and not necessarily increase your hive number. You could just leave it there and see what happens. You can do as Paul does, remove the top box and take it to the apiary for mating. So you can just either take that whole box off, or you can take a few of the frames out of that box, because now you have a queen cell, and you can take it to the mating yard. Or you can remove the frames and put them into a nuke and take it somewhere for mating. So again, it's just an easy way to, and then day 20, it's actually 24, but I said 20 just to remember. Check to see if the queen's laying. Again, the queen will usually lay sort of 2 weeks after emergence. So that would really be day 24 and not 20, and congrats, you have a new colony. Remember, new queen, 0 is when you start the process, 5 days is when the queen cell is capped, 10 days is when you have to move it and put it somewhere, and 20 is when you can check for the queen to be laying. Again, somebody said the fun in beekeeping for me is trying new things. Will you mess some things up? Absolutely, but it's kind of a cool thing to make new colonies without grafting. Especially once the swarm. Right now, it's easy to have new colonies because the swarms are in trees and there's swarm cells in the hive. But if you've been conscientious about removing your cells and doing good swarm management, and June comes around and you don't have any extra hives because you've been really good in your swarm management, and you want to go into winter with a few extra hives, this is one way to make increases without grafting. And there's others too, so this is just one of them. Is Tom on yet? Oh, and any other questions? If I know we're running short on time, but I'd encourage people to read about the cloak board. It's kind of a cool way to make queens. And if you have questions, you can surely ask now or email me. Okay,
Tom, I believe you're on.
And you could buy a cloak board. I don't know. I don't think Ike sells them, but Pan Lake sells them. But they're $35, and like I said, you can make a cloak board with an extra queen excluder for a few bucks. Tom?
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So, bee insurance. We wanted to kind of touch on the importance of having it. There's a number of different reasons. First of all, if you're selling your honey, you need to make sure that you have insurance. Most flea markets, anything like that, country fairs, anything like that, want you to have an insurance policy, a deck page showing that you're covered. I do provide that through Liberty Mutual. The cost is $500 a year to give you 1 million, 2 million coverage. Now, the reason you need that is if, let's say you gave somebody a bottle of honey with a busted top on it, and they got cut or something like that. Well, today people will sue for anything. They really will, especially if they're desperate or something. So just make sure that you protect yourself. I mean, everybody in our group has worked really, really hard their whole lives to build a really nice nest egg for what they have, in your home and everything like that. So it's a good idea to carry it. And you have to weigh the expense of it. I mean, I would say if you're getting somewhere between, I'd say 300 pounds is about that's about the break point of it, because right there, I mean, if you're selling your honey for $10 a jar, you're at about $3,000 a year. I mean, 500 of that's going out into insurance. If you're selling a lot more than that, like if you're 700, 800 pounds, 1,000 pounds, then you really do need to get it. The more honey that you're getting, the more I would say you want to make sure that you are covering yourself for. But Liberty Mutual does cover that, and I can write it as a standalone. You don't have to take the auto and home, although I do have that available. But they do write a specialty product just for beekeepers. Several of the people in the club do have it. And, it's peace of mind. That's the best thing I can tell you. It's peace of mind. If you have an issue, your policy's there to help you.
So Tom, if my neighbor gets stung by a bee and they claim it's one of mine, is it covered that way as well?
The policy that you have is not sting insurance. Okay. If your hives are on your property, then your homeowners is going to take care of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and it's in the pursuit of a business. If it's in the pursuit of a business, then you have to have commercial insurance for it. But that's the best I can tell you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. But if you have any other further questions on that, I'll give you my email. tmckinney672002 at yahoo.com. But really, it's product insurance for you, the beekeeper. And if you're selling your honey at a farmer's market, flea market, something like that, it's going to protect you.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom.
All right. All right.
I know we're up against 9 o'clock. I guess we should wrap it up tonight. Mark, I can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
Yeah, we passed 9 o'clock.
Yes. So I'm gonna end with our bee chat. We do have my son's favorite teenage son. He does not understand this one bit, how people on a Friday night from 7 to 9 o'clock will have any desire to come and chat about bees on a Friday night. He'll walk through and he'll shake his head and keep moving. But there are a bunch of us that join every Friday. It's very, very informal. Bring your beverage. You basically can listen, you can give advice, you can ask questions, you can share stories. It's just there to help with all this crazy Corona you know, I started this just to keep my mind off CNN or Fox News or whatever I'm watching that night to do something different. And I really do. Every week, there's different people that join, and I definitely take away something every week. And it says 7 to 9. I think the record is like 10:30 for Beach Chat. So one Friday it went on until 10:30. So again, it's there for anybody who wants to join.
It's like 2 hours of bee gurus.
Yeah, 2 hours of bee gurus, you know, and there's some interesting people that join, you know, and it really is it's a great opportunity. And I really welcome both the beginners and also the bee gurus out there. I know there's a lot of very experienced people who aren't officers in the club, but definitely it's a cool way to share your experience. So please join me so I can have some fun. With that, you know, we're still in coronavirus. Unfortunately, we're socially distancing. So, you know, Tina's doing a phenomenal job with informing everybody about what's going on. Please check your emails. I will talk to Jen about having some better means of communication up on the website. I think that makes lots of sense. We just have to do it safely and securely, and Jen will help me with that. And I don't know. I guess that's it for tonight. And thank you all for joining. And you know, any comments, questions, you know, send them to Tina if you don't want to chat with me. And I'm always open to getting a phone call or getting an email. So, you know, this is kind of not exactly what I expected this year as president. So I'm kind of trying to adapt and roll with it. So if people have ideas or have thoughts about how to do this differently or better, because this week I was struggling. I'm like, what am I doing here? You know, and is this helpful or not? So again, I welcome anybody's ideas or suggestions on what else the club can be doing. So again, good night, everybody. And thanks for joining again. See you next month.
Thanks, George.
Yep.
Thanks, George. Good night.
Thanks, George. Good night, everyone.
Thank